But listen to the beginning part.
To produce something that would show how the Lord blesses those who are faithful for the purpose of...
Did you hear that? Did that compute? Like, for him to do this is so weird, because he's obviously been such a strong opponent of the prosperity gospel. But something has happened in evangelicalism where the prosperity gospel, like, people don't, like, they're not so swayed by getting money and being rich. But then, like, when it comes to this category of, how anyone behaved during the pandemic, what they decided to do as local churches, there's this thing that's been happening where they're all of a sudden just giving into the prosperity gospel. They're just saying, okay, well, we were faithful, so God has to bless us. And, like, that's literally what he just said.
To produce something that would show how the Lord blesses those who are faithful.
All right. What, like, the context, we don't know exactly the context, okay? So let's back up. Like, for me, I need to back up just a little bit and be careful about how I word some of these things. But I'm fairly confident that when he's talking about there is the growth that these churches have had since they followed after God, since they defied tyrants and obeyed God. A lot of these guys have been saying that. A lot of them have been talking about how, our church grew by hundreds. We had to go to multiple services because we were blessed by God for our stand. Like, one, that could be the case, okay? I'm not above saying that couldn't happen. Like, that could be the case. But the pride attached to that, to say that's why, and also, like, just being naive. Like, a lot of these people who came, they came to these churches because they were open, because of their political stance, because they were talking about COVID being nothing. That's why they came to these churches. And eventually they're going to leave. Well, at least most of them. If there was an extreme thing that brought them there, unless that church just gets more and more extreme, they're probably going to leave eventually to another extreme thing, right? Like, that's what we've seen. It's what we've seen with the Young Restless Reform movement. It's what we've seen all over the place with these extreme movements. People come and they like something. They attach themselves to some ideology that they find, really strong and bold. And then they'll attach themselves to the next thing that's strong and bold. Or they'll deconstruct or something like that. That's what happens with these things. So I always ask these guys when I have any kind of conversation with them, which I have had some conversation with some of these kind of individuals. I asked them how many people got saved. Not about how many baptisms there were, because that's like, look at the SBC, right? Like, we did, 10 billion baptisms. Like, okay. Like, numbers might be inflated there. And then also just how many baptisms has that person had, So I'm not interested in how many baptisms, these guys that claim to have been blessed by God for their faithfulness. I don't care about the baptisms. I want to hear about people getting saved. Not, I thought I knew the gospel and then I heard about Calvinism and now I'm a Christian. Like, that happens, but that's not what I want to hear about. I want to hear about the people that were, living a life of sin and got just turned all the way around because of the gospel of Jesus Christ and their lives were changed. I want to hear that. If you're talking about being blessed by God, I would expect that would mean actual revival, people getting saved. They want to pick on Asbury for everything that happened there. But let's talk about these churches that were blessed by God for being faithful. How many people got saved? I got to tell you, the people that I've talked to, the numbers are very small. They'll jump to well, we've had so many baptisms and so many people added to our church membership. Okay. How many people got saved? Like, you want to talk about being blessed by God for your faithfulness? I think that means people getting saved. But here, it's just so weird to hear John MacArthur, who has been like totally against the prosperity gospel, like totally against Benny Hinn and Kenneth Copeland and all like the hyper charismatics that talk about being blessed by God with finances because they, obeyed and they mustered up, like all the action needed to live faithfully. And they gave, they sowed, that seed of money, whatever. Like, it's just bizarre to see someone who had such a strong stance against that. And thank God for that stance, because I think it had ripple effects in evangelicalism, good ripple effects for this. It's just so weird now to see John MacArthur now do like the complete opposite when it comes to spiritual blessing. And again, we don't know the exact context, so I'm sure that there are going to be people that are like, oh, you got it totally wrong. You don't even know. I'm pretty confident that he's talking about these churches growing, because that's been a huge thing that he's talked about, that many of these guys have talked about, that their churches have grown during the pandemic, that their influence has grown. And if you want to talk about it that way, then let's talk about, the faithfulness of Stephen Furtick, right? The faithfulness of Joel Osteen. Same thing. Like, their churches grew, but okay, it was, they're just getting itching ears, but that can never happen to you. Like the arrogance of just being like, well, of course it's because we were so faithful. Like, again, that could happen, but when you talk to these guys and there's like no talk about people getting saved, I don't think that happened.